Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vick and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to help support the show by becoming a premium member, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast to sign up. Memberships are only $2.99 a month. By becoming a premium member, you'll be able to download episodes onto your mobile device and listen to them commercial-free wherever you go. Also, if you'd like to check out the new Dogman Encounters t-shirt store, please go to dogmanencounters.com/store and take a look around. Buying a t-shirt or sweatshirt there is another great way to help support the show. As always, thanks for listening. Alright, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Starrick. Zach, welcome to the show.
Well, howdy, Vic. It's good to speak to you again, bud.
Oh, it's great talking to you too. Thanks for your time. Zach, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Zach Starrick. I am a resident of Crab Orchard, Illinois, in southern Illinois. I am 23 years old. I am the co-founder and team leader of the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters team that was established back in 2015. I am a cryptozoologist. I have been studying cryptids now since I was 10 years old. I've been doing field work now since I was 16. In my research, I've had the opportunity to travel and to investigate other cryptids such as the Kentucky Wolfman of LBL, the Big Muddy Monster of Murfreesboro, Illinois, which is just right down the road here. But other than that, I am a cattle farmer from southern Illinois. I have grown up on the cattle farm, so I know the woods like the back of my hand. I grew up hunting and fishing with my grandfather. And that's pretty much the summary on me, my life in a nutshell. Whatever else y'all want to know, I'll give it to you.
In case you haven't noticed, Zach stays really busy. I don't know how he gets everything done that he does. Considering the fact that you've seen both Sasquatch and Dogman in the area where you live, does your area have a history of cryptid sightings?
Oh my gosh, I mean, you talk about cryptids, Illinois has got to be one of the most weirdest states in the United States, even in the lower 48, not counting Alaska and Hawaii. I mean, we have had, in the last 100 years or so, a cornucopia of cryptid reports. I mean, we've had Bigfoot reports, we've had extraterrestrial reports, we've had paranormal, we've had Dogman and Bigfoot, we've had pretty much every creature that you can think of that would be in the air, on the ground, or in the water, we got.
I don't know too much about it, but yeah, I have heard about quite a few cryptids being seen in the state.
Oh yes, we have had reports of Thunderbird, we've had UFO reports since the 70s. We even had what I class as an extraterrestrial in the town of Enfield, Illinois, called the Enfield Horror, which I've told you about before. And then we've had a very ferocious creature that was reported in Illini, Native American tribes' legends, called the Piasaw bird, which it translates from Illini into English, and it's translated into bird that devours men. And it was eventually killed by the Illini tribe after decades and generations of it torturing and terrorizing the Illini. And then, I mean, we've got Dogman, like I said, and the UFOs and Bigfoot. I mean, even in Illinois, we've had Mothman. For the last year and a half up north, there's been reports of Mothman in the Chicagoland area for the past year and a half. To say that Illinois is a spooky state is an understatement, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. I'm sure there are plenty of people listening to this show tonight who are hearing you talk about all these cryptids running around the state. I'll bet you might be changing some minds about moving to Illinois.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you're a thrill seeker and you love the unknown, I suggest come to Southern Illinois, because Southern Illinois has got a history all its own.
You stated that you're a founding member of the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters team just a bit ago. Do many Dogman eyewitnesses ask you to research their sightings?
Since our inception in 2015, it started off with the 6 members that we have now, and it grew, and then our numbers dropped in our ranks. But in 3 going on 4 years now that we have been together, we've been handed one Dogman sighting, and it was one I'll tell you about later on when we get to it. It was a report where a Dogman was seen by a woman in a nearby town from where I live, about 15 miles from here. But that was the only one Dogman encounter that we've been turned in. Mainly we've been turned in Thunderbird reports, UFOs, paranormal, and Bigfoot. Those are the ones that we're most notable for is Bigfoot sightings.
Well, considering how Dogman sightings are on the rise, I'm sure it's just a short matter of time before they start coming in.
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, like I said for a while now, growing up, you always heard about monsters being in, like, Gévaudan, France, with the Beast of Gévaudan. You've heard about the Loch Ness Monster. You heard about the Sasquatch of British Columbia in the Pacific Northwest, the Yeti of the Himalayas and the Bhutan and the Mustang region. They're not on the other side of the world, Vic. They're going to be pretty much right in your backyard. You don't have to go on the other side of the world to do research and look for them. They could be just basically out your back door.
That's a pretty disconcerting thought. You said you've been into Cryptid since you were a little kid, but what made you decide to take the next step and create your own team?
Well, what happened was I'd been doing research up until 2015, and it was just me and my brother. At the time, we were known as the Southern Illinois Squatch Hunters, and we go around in the woods looking for sign of Bigfoot. Of course, then him and me were still green and still wet behind the ears, but we knew what to look for. We looked for footprints, and we listened, but we didn't know what the kind of sign to look for whenever it came to, like, tree structures. You look for, like, the tree structures, the teepee structures. You look for a nest. We didn't know what to look for. And I started reading up on the BFRO, Ames, Appalachian Investigators of Mysterious Sightings, and all these other shows where it showed where these guys actually were public with their research, and they weren't ashamed to share it without the fear of ridicule. So I went public, and some of my lifelong friends who I'd never shared this with because I was scared of being picked on and say, you know, ha, you chase this, you're stupid. I got to the point I wasn't scared to share what I've been doing, which this journey that had took up a majority of my life in my private life. And I went public with it in 2015, and it started getting some notoriety in the local community. And these friends of mine, Gunnar and John, who I'd grown up with, they're like, are you serious about this stuff? And I said, yes, I've been doing this since I was 9-10 years old. They said, we'd like to help. We have a genuine interest in these, and we would like to help at least do our part to prove that these creatures exist. Of course, Gunnar and John are skeptics. I know these creatures exist, and I believe that people are seeing these things because they can't go and dream up all this great detail that's had traumatic effect on them to where they're going and just hoaxing it. They can't, it's mind-boggling that they would actually go, and some of them, they're creative. But we come together, and it started off with 8 members, and it grew, and then it decreased in number. But now we're back going strong, and like I said, group of born and bred hunters and outdoorsmen, born and bred in Southern Illinois, and we're searching for the truth that is cryptids. And basically what we say that we're doing, we go and we are looking to put a name on the nameless and explain the unexplainable. That's the best way I can say what our mission is.
It sounds like you created your team in 2015, it got legs, and you haven't looked back since.
Yeah, basically, the rest is history.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You've had 3 Dogman encounters, Zach. The first one happened in July of last year. Please tell us about them. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, I was 22 at the time. I hadn't really done very much Dogman research. I mean, I'd listened to your show and everything. I had done extensive research on them, but I never really seen one. I never knew what to expect. I never knew really what to look for. Like, I knew to look for prints and hair and droppings, but leading up to that, I had a very minuscule knowledge on Dogman. Of course, where I'm at now is the same where I was with Bigfoot. It sparked from a sighting. My first sighting happened on July 4th of 2017. My brother was with me. That night, my grandparents had their yearly fireworks display, and we had people from all over the neighborhood, family, friends, and we were having a good time. I mean, we were shooting off big stuff, and you would think everything that was in the woods nearby was going to scatter. That wasn't the case. So we get done, grand finale's all done, we're tearing down, and my neighbor's 2 sons said, you know, we want to walk home tonight. We don't want to ride in the side-by-side. So I said, of course, their mother was against it, and I said, listen, let me and my brother Josh, we'll go and we'll walk the boys home. You go on home. You got to work in the morning. And I said, we'll make sure they get home. She said, okay, fair enough, took off. So we started walking up the main road, and I stopped off at our house because where my grandparents' house is and my house is only 0.3 of a mile, but where my neighbor lives is only a half mile across this valley that sits between us. And we stopped off at my house, and I picked up my .22 rifle because out here you don't know what the wildlife department's turned loose, or it's 4th of July, someone gets out there and gets drunk or gets a little high on the herb, and you don't know what they're capable of. So I took it as protection because I told her I would take care of her boys. So we were walking along, we almost get run over on the road. I drop the boys off, and my brother looks at me and says, all right, what are we going to do? He said, I'm not going to walk back on the main road. We almost got run over not 5 minutes ago. So I said, here's what we do. Let's cut across this back field over here behind their house. And this field sits right directly between where we live and where they live. So just half a mile straight shot across this valley. So I said, let's go and cut across the field. And when we get to the stretch of cane reeds that go along where the creek is, let's head south, and we go up the trail across the creek and go up through the woods, and it'll come up right behind the house. And he said, okay, fine by me. So it was still moonlight out. It was full moon that night. So we started walking. We didn't have no lights on. We were just walking by the moonlight. And we get to the reeds, and I stop, and he said, okay, what are we going to do? I said, let's go right down this way. So we started walking. We hadn't took 20 steps, and we heard something in the cane reeds thrashing. And I looked at him, and I said, did you hearing that? He said, yeah. And I said, must be bird, owl, something. He said, yeah, I guess you're right. And we keep on walking, and something just keeps moving through the reeds and keeps thrashing. So we stopped, and I said, are you screwing with me? He said, no, I'm not screwing with you. And I said, okay, we kept walking. Same thing happened again. You could hear something coming through the reeds, and those reeds were tall. And I said, you got your phone with you? He said, yeah. He said, why? And I said, give me the phone. I'm going to turn the flashlight on. So I took his little phone. He had a flip phone at the time with a flashlight on it. And I turned the flash on, and I shined it towards where the reeds was. And I started panning from left to right real slow, looking in the reeds to see if I could see anything, looking down at the ground and looking eye level to see if there was an owl in there. And I get about right in front of me, about maybe 5 or 10 feet from me, and I see these golden red eyes just looking straight at me like they were burning a hole right through me. And I could see a silhouette in the cane reeds, and it looked like a squared head, a square jaw and a rounded head, and had pointed ears sticking straight erect. And I said, "Are you seeing this, Josh?" And I pointed this time. I'm shaking. I'm so nervous. And I mean, I have nerves of steel. I was scared. And I just kept my eyes, and I grabbed a hold of my brother by the arm, and I said, and I pushed him behind me. I said, "You stay here on this side, and you keep me between you and those reeds. Let's turn back around and head back towards the main road." So we're walking along, and you could hear it following us through the cane reeds, just thrashing. And you can start hearing this, you're just hearing it growl, and you can hear it going, just panting, trying to keep up with us. And we started really booking it. We started power walking. It just kept going with us. And I looked behind us, and you could see the tops of the cane reeds just thrashing side to side and parting up the middle, like parting the Red Sea in the moonlight. I said, "Come on, pick it up. Let's go." And we started jogging, and it just started keeping more pace with us. And about that time, we heard it start coming up out of the reeds, and I seen the arm reach up out of the reeds to push the reeds away. And I mean, only way I can compare the way its arm looked was it looked kind of like a Bigfoot's arm. It had the shaggy hair on it, but it was really muscle toned. You could see the definition and the muscle structure on the arm. And I seen a head pop out of the reeds. So I said, "Come on, Harlan." And we started sprinting towards the road. Well, that thing come up out of the reeds and started chasing us through the open field. And I'm glancing back, and I'm pushing my brother in front of me to keep him going. And I'm dragging him by the arm, and we get to where the dusk to dawn light is on our road that the county left out. And we stopped, and we looked back, and it just broke the chase. And it just turned around and it walked away. And, I mean, even to this day, I mean, I had nightmares about it. My brother, he's scared to death to go back into that field, even in the daytime. He's empathic like I am. He won't even go back in those woods that's behind the house. He says there's something evil back there. And, I mean, I still go back in those woods because I'm still trying to find this thing, trying to see it again. And up to this point, no avail in that area of seeing a Dogman. But my brother is still terrified of it. He had that evil feeling. And I honestly thought that him and me were going to be dog food that night, to put it as a comical view. I thought we was going to die. We was going to be puppy chow. So fast forward, me and a friend of mine, we just got off work, and I went in town. Of course, I was working on the old truck. I worked for a document shredding company, and we was working an old box truck. So we were doing all hand labor. So we had a long day, and I got off late. I want to say about 5, 6 o'clock. And this was in October of last year, a couple months after the whole ordeal on the 4th of July happened. And I'm driving down this road off of Route 166 here in Williamson County called Shed Church Road. And it's just a little 5-mile stretch of back road. And there's agriculture ground and cattle farms on both sides. And I'm just tooling along, just minding my own business, trying to relax. And I'm just looking out on both sides of the road because it was starting to get dark. But it was still fairly light, but it was starting to get dark. You know what I mean, twilight. And I looked off on the left side up this little ATV trail, this logging road. They had been logging in this area where this intersection of Shed Church Road and Sayreville Road that comes up through Crab Orchard. They had been logging that, I want to say, probably about maybe 2 or 3 months. So they had quite a lot of timber down. And they still had the skidder out there, and they had the yarder. So they was still able to drag timber out. And this was virgin timber, never been touched by man. So I looked down the little yarder road they got, and I see this like a black figure squatted down on its haunches, and it looked like it had something in its hand. So I hit my brakes, and I put my truck in reverse, and I backed up, and this thing was about maybe, let's see, I want to say probably about maybe 20 yards from me, probably about 50 feet. And whenever I backed up, it was still haunched down. It looked like it was holding a dead raccoon in its hand. But whenever I hit my brakes squeaked a little bit. And so it stood up. You could see its ears perked up whenever my brakes squeaked. And it looked over its shoulder at me, and it dropped its roadkill, and it stood up. And I want to estimate this Dogman stood probably about maybe 6'5", 6'6", somewhere in there. And he just stood there and he looked at me for like maybe 30 seconds. Like he was like surveying, like, what is that thing? Is it food? Should I be afraid of it? He was just like real curious. And for some reason, I rolled down my window and I started fiddling around trying to get to my phone. And that's when I glanced up and I could see it walking towards my truck, but it was taking real slow. Like if you've seen in the old Western movies when the cowboys are going for the shootout and they take that real slow stride, like step, step, step. That's the way it was walking. And the legs were bent at the knee, and then it curves back around, introverted style, with the bottom of the shin of the leg. And it was just creeping up and looking, and you could see it start snarling at me. You could see its eyes blinking at me, and you could see its ears twitching, trying to swat the gnats off. So I just went and I hit my horn, and that's when it stopped, and it just turned around and it ran off back down the trail. And it hung left up into the timber off of that ATV trail, and it was gone. Going into my third encounter, my second encounter happened in October sometime of last year, 2017. Fast forward to July 7th of 2018, just about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had been out night fishing with my old baseball coach. Him and me, we go fishing every now and then whenever we have the chance. And we hadn't been fishing in 2 or 3 weeks. We figured it would be good timing to go fishing because, there was no moon. Weather was perfect. It had been raining, everything. Water temperature was prime. Expectancy to catch nice big blue cats. And we'd like to go fishing a lot down on his strip cut. And we'll go out probably about 9 o'clock at night. And we probably won't come home till about maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. And we'll come back with a big stringer of fish, and sometimes we strike out on fish. But that night, we'd been catching fish like crazy, and it wasn't nothing. They were just trash fish. John looked at me about 1 o'clock, and he said, "Well, old man, you about ready to call it?" I said, "Yeah, I just might as well. I got to work tomorrow, so we might as well just call it." And he said, "Okay, that's fine." So we load all our stuff up. We throw our chairs and our reels in the back of our trucks. And he said, "All right, let me know when you get home." And I said, "All right, see you later, old man." And I peeled out. And I went down the Beasley Farms lane that goes from his strip cut back out to Saraville Road. And it was tooling along. And I went down over these rises. And the wildlife was moving like crazy that night. It was, just really odd. The deer were moving like crazy. That's a given out here. But the coons, the possums, the bobcats, the owls, everything was just really active that night. And I guess that must have been because of the weather. So I come back up on that same area where I had my encounter months prior to that. And whenever I had my encounter last October, I come up over the rise there and I start slowing down because I seen a deer come across the road in front of me. So I slowed down. I was going maybe about 60 miles an hour, and I slowed down to about 25, 30 to get down to the speed limit. And when I did, right as I got to about 35, this thing run right out in front of my truck, and it was so close I about clipped him. And I looked and I could see it was just a split second. It was just like a shot of lightning. And the thing just, bolted from my truck. It was so close, I almost hit it. And it was what I believe, it was the same Dogman that I seen last October that run in front of my truck, and it was after that deer. That thing come up, bolted on the road, and it got two-stepping across this road in a dead sprint, and it hit that right shoulder, and it jumped a ditch that's on the right side that I helped a friend of mine dig for a drainage ditch so that way that the road won't flood. And it cleared the 12-foot wide ditch and a 5-strand barbed wire fence, and it landed into the cornfield that the deer ran into. And that thing, that was the closest I've ever been, and I'll say it was too close for comfort. I just abruptly stopped, and I looked back, and I just kept on going. I didn't turn around. I went straight home, because if this thing was bold enough to run out in front of my truck, probably knowing that my truck was coming, and be willing to come close enough to where I could actually strike it with my truck and probably kill me and total my truck, what's to stop that thing if I went back looking for it to come up and stalk on my truck and come up and pull me out my driver's side window and kill me? But, that thing was close enough that I about took it out with my truck.
Did that Dogman ever look at you when he was that close to you, or keep his eyes locked on that deer?
He was focused like a heat-seeking missile on that deer. Like I said, he was too focused on that deer to notice that I was even there, and I was within 5 feet of almost hitting him.
Did you ever go back the next day to cast prints or look for evidence since you knew exactly where that Dogman stood?
No, I didn't. Like I said, I had to work that day, and it rained the next day, so if there was any kind of prints that would have been left behind, they would have been washed away because it come a torrential downpour the next day. I haven't been back to that area because I just don't have a wish to go back through that area. And if I ever do go back through there, I'll be having my head on a swivel. For something to come that close to me almost striking it with my truck, I don't want to tango with it. There's a little instinct in the back of my head that's saying, that was the same one that you seen last October. And in the split second that I saw it, it looked identical. Same color, same build. It matched it to a T. I doubt it had a twin. But it's just that little voice in the back of my head saying this is the same one and this is his area. It's got plenty of cover. There's plenty of dogs and cats in that neighborhood. This is not a rural area. This is sort of like a small suburb. And there's cattle on that road. There's plenty of farmland for it to hide, plenty of wooded area. There is plenty of farm ponds. There's plenty of cover. It's perfect habitat for a Dogman to stay hidden and not have to worry about being seen.
Just imagine what the people who live in that area would do if they knew what was lurking in the shadows.
I honestly do believe that they know it's there. They're just scared of being picked on and ridiculed. And, of course, out there in Crab Orchard, they go in there if there's something funny about a member in the neighborhood, they go and they exploit it and they make fun of them and they troll them and everything and they crack jokes and everything. And some of these people, I believe these farmers, have seen the Dogman and have lost horses and cattle to it. Just recently we had dogs and cats in the neighborhood of Crab Orchard come up missing not about 2-3 months ago, and right around Thanksgiving and Christmas come up missing. And they still haven't found them, and they didn't even find a body. So it makes you wonder if the Dogman was picking them off.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. And speaking of what you just hit on, people in your area have been telling you about livestock they've lost under strange circumstances too. What more can you tell us about that?
The livestock killings out here has been drastic, and it's been going on now. We've had 3 attacks in similar style in the last 12 years. First, it started with my neighbor and his family. They had herd of 25, 30 goats out there on their little family farm, which ain't even that big. And it's out there by the old coal mine, Brushy Creek, that Western Fuels ran for a long time until it closed down in 2002. And in one night, they lost all but 5 of the goats. and they were all throats ripped out, laying in a pile, not scattered, a neatly stacked pile in the corner of that pen. Another dog started barking that night. It wasn't no type of struggle. They didn't hear none of the goats crying out like if a bobcat or a coyote had got in the pen with them. Goats will bleed out. They'll sound an alarm. There was no alarm. It was quick, and it was stealthy, and it was precise. But none of the meat was taken off the goats. None of it was touched. Just throats ripped out like it was killing to kill. And just about a year ago, fast forward about 10 years later, there was a family that lives in Crab Orchard. They own a little antique store. They lost all of their herd of goats and sheep in one night. And they have a big 100-acre pasture with the barn up close to the house. And they went out there the next morning, and all the sheep and the goats were just ripped apart, scattered all over the field, up into the barn, going in and out both doors, all along the fence line from end to end. Every 20 feet there was a dead goat ripped to pieces. And I want to say he said about anywhere from a week to about 2 weeks later, he was out doing a night recon because he thought it might have been like a mountain lion or wild dogs. And he looked out there and he said, and in his words, he said, it was the biggest wolf he ever seen. And he had a 30-06 and he shot at it 3 times and it never phased it. 30-06, that's a big bullet. And it didn't even shake it. And then this last one I'm going to tell you about happened around Thompsonville area, just about 10 miles north of here. There was a lamb that was slaughtered, and it made WSIL TV3 News, where the Winston County Police Department took the case in, and they brought in wildlife biologists. And they were really just hammering this case, trying to find an answer what it was, but it was basically an open and shut case. There was very little forensic work done. They went in there, tested it, and they said it was a bobcat. Case closed. That farmer said it wouldn't have been a bobcat because that lamb was locked up. It was about maybe 3 weeks old, little white lamb, locked up inside the barn that had a latch on the door, and there was Australian shepherds and border collies all around that farm that they had watching their livestock. Not one of those dogs sounded an alarm. Something had to have hands to get in that barn and take that lamb. The weird thing was the lamb was found right outside the barn, and the head was took clean off, and there was no blood in the body. And I know that there is Satan worshipers out here, the Luciferians. They have their black mass every Saturday night in a little cemetery down south of here. We know the Klan is still hot in this area. They do like animal sacrifice for their rights. But if it was a human that killed this one lamb with all these forms of alarm all around, and it was a human, wouldn't you think one of those dogs would have actually tried and subdued it? No alarm was making. Nobody was woke up. That lamb did not die on its own and pop its own head off. That thing, the farmer told me it was healthy and in tip-top condition with its health. Wasn't no reason it would have been sick. Something odd is going on here in southern Illinois. And I believe it to be Dogman to be partially responsible of it with all these voracious attacks. The question is, right now, it's only livestock and domesticated pets. What scares me is, when's it going to be a child? When's it going to be an adult human? No one wants to see him get mauled. And I mean, I'm no kill, but I wouldn't be scared to put one of these things down if it turned. And, I mean, it's just one of those things that scares me. Like, it was an open shut case on this lamb's slaughter. Why? Do they know something? That's the thing I can't put my finger on, Vic.
Well, everything you just told us about the livestock killings does fit perfectly with the MO of dogmen. Does that mean dogmen were responsible for the deaths? Of course not, but it sure does make you wonder. You told me in the pre-interview that the weather patterns this year are off in your area. Has that seemed to increase cryptid activity?
Oh gosh, yes. Not just cryptid, but the wildlife. I mean, there's still snow geese in this area. They would have already flown back to Canada. Canadian snow geese, they would already took off. They are still in this area. And I mean, everything is just off. I mean, the planting season is off. In my 23 years of living, this was the coldest winter that we've had in my life. This last winter, the lowest it got was 20 degrees below zero during the daytime. I mean, the weather patterns is just out the wazoo off. I started taking day by day the weather habits of the animals. When certain animals come back to this area, whenever the martin come back, when the robin come back, when the cardinals started really taking off, whenever the does started fawning, whenever the cattle started having their calves, everything is so off. I mean, basically, we had 6 months of winter and it skipped spring, went straight to summer. And now we're getting into the fall weather. It started this week, fall's coming on early. And it's not even into fall yet. It's still about a month before fall is supposed to start in. And usually fall weather starts early August. We're still at the end of July. I mean, could it be responsible? Maybe. Is there a coincidence? I think not. It's just something, it's unexplainable to me. But like you notice, right before it rains, the deer will be out like crazy picking in these fields, on the clover, on the beans, whatever's in there to chew on and eat. They'll be out and taking care of all that. But, I mean, the weather has just been so off. But I do believe, like what it does with wildlife like deer and coons and possums, I do believe that the weather patterns do affect the habits of cryptids as well.
Well, if the weather patterns are that out of whack, yeah, I'll bet the animals don't know what to do, including the cryptids. You found out about a woman who saw a dogman right outside her window. Please tell us what you know about that.
It happened in fall of 2013 in the little town of Carrier Mills. Carrier Mills has got anywhere from 450 to 1,000 people living within the city limits. But this woman lived out close to Sahara Fish and Wildlife area. Sahara Lake is an old strip pit where they brought the dredge in and they coal mined it. And so now it's just one big fishing lake. The woman lived near Sahara Lake, and it was just one night that the report was turned in to me. It was turned in by a family friend that she told, and she said that she was sitting there doing dishes one night after supper, and she just had that feeling like something was watching her. And she looked up, and looking right in the kitchen window of her single-wide trailer was this gigantic wolf head looking straight at her. And she thought it was someone playing around until it blinked at her. And then that's when she let back onto the floor and ran, and she locked all the doors, shut all the curtains, and turned off all the lights. And, I mean, it sounds like something out of a horror movie, to be honest with you. And that was the only report that I've had. I've heard reports of them finding rather large wolf tracks out by Sahara Lake, but that's the only eyewitness testimony that I have received. But we are still, the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters are looking into this case.
Yeah, that woman's sighting does sound like something straight out of a horror movie. In my opinion, that's almost worse when you look out a window and you see a dogman right there steering in. I think that would almost be worse than being outside with the dogman.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's something extra creepy about that. You've got some conferences coming up where you're going to be a guest speaker. When and where will those be held?
Well, there's a lot of them coming up. We just did wrap on the ECBRO Virginia Bigfoot conference this last month, which was a huge success. I want to let everybody know that we are planning on having it set up. We've already got confirmed speakers, and I'll be speaking there this next year. The date will be released later on. Daniel Benoit will be speaking there. Andy McGrath is coming all the way from the UK to speak. So far, that's the only speakers that we've got lined up. But this Friday night on July 27th, I will be giving the SIMH Bigfoot in Illinois seminar at the Crab Orchard Public Library. If you can't make it, tune in to my Facebook page, Zach D. Starrick, and I'll be broadcasting it live, the whole event live that night. So hopefully everybody will tune in for that. And then coming up in October, on the 19th, 20th, and 21st of October, in Kingsport, Tennessee, at the Bays Mountain Park Expo Hall, I will be speaking at the Tennessee Bigfoot Conference, along with Matt Delph of Mountain Empire Cryptid Researchers Organization, along with Dr. John Stamey and the She Squatchers from North Dakota and Minnesota, my good friends, and Miss Jenna Grover and Jen Cruz. So be sure to go ahead and come on out for that, folks. It's going to be awesome. And then after that, I'm taking the holidays off, and I plan on being down in Kentucky. It's in the works of where I'm going to be speaking at a Bigfoot conference down around Harlan, Kentucky. So be sure to keep an eye out on that.
Those sound like some really good conferences. Sounds like those would be good ones to check out. Not only do you run your own cryptid research team, you've also got a cryptid-specific podcast of your own. Please tell the listeners how they can listen to it.
Yes, be sure to check us out on YouTube, the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters on YouTube. That's the name of the channel. Be sure to check out Backwoods Investigations. I just wrapped on season 3 back in April, and I took summer off to focus on my research. If you have a cryptid encounter, whether it is with the Dogman, a Sasquatch, the Mothman, UFO, extraterrestrial, or a paranormal encounter, please do look me up. If you want to email your encounter to me, you can look me up, blimp, SIMH, @gmail.com. BLIMP, SIMH, @gmail.com. Or find me on Facebook, Zach D. Starrick. I'll be glad to talk to you. Or you can check us out on Facebook, the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, or Cryptid CSI, my new team that I launched earlier this year. Some of the top researchers from all over the United States. We have researchers in New Mexico, Louisiana, in Appalachia, even right here in Illinois, down in Texas. These are very interesting folks. We go around, and we actually had a case where a service dog that was a pet turned up missing up in Michigan, and we looked into it, and the family that owned the pet contacted us. So hopefully we give them a little bit of closure. And we actually had people on the ground in Michigan looking. So, yeah, be sure to check us out there. Like and subscribe to Southern Illinois Monster Hunters on YouTube. Like our page and share us with your friends on Facebook to stay up to date with us.
If you haven't already checked out Zach's show, I highly suggest you do that. It is a really good show. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Zach. Before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yes. Whenever it comes to any kind of cryptid, whether it's Sasquatch or Dogman, extraterrestrials, the Mothman, keep an open mind. Don't be so fast to pass judgment on what someone says. There's a person that, of all people, said this thing, says, do not pass judgment on someone that is presenting evidence or telling you an encounter and call bull on them, because you have no room to pass judgment because you weren't there to say whether or not if it happened or not. So be sure to keep an open mind about everything. I'm 23 years old. I've been at this a long time. I'm still learning new things every day in this world. So there's still more places to be explored, more things to be discovered. Especially if you're going to go out in the woods and if you want to go and say, well, I want to have an encounter with a Dogman. I want to have an encounter with a Bigfoot. Trust me, don't go looking for them. They'll find you. That's how it's always happened with me. Always know the wildlife in the area that you are researching. It is very useful knowledge. If you go into do an investigation in that area, look up in the city archives of that area or the county archives. Look up the history of sightings in that area. Try and establish a grid like police do whenever they're trying to find a suspect. If there's sightings of that suspect, they make a grid, pattern grid, and they go and they find an area and zero in. Always be prepared. Safety first. If you're going in an area that has heavy bear activity, be sure to be carrying like bear spray, an air horn, or don't be afraid to even take a gun. People say you're not a real researcher if you're carrying a gun. I call bull crap on that because I pack a 38 and a 20 gauge every time I'm in the woods, except for state land. I don't pack in the state parks. But always be sure you know the area that you're going into. Make sure someone knows where you're at. Keep in touch with them. Or if you're going in a place with bad reception, say, if you don't hear from me by this so-and-so time, send help. So, know your area, safety first, let people know where you're going, always be prepared, and really look up on your history whenever you're investigating a case. It proves useful in the long run.
Well, that's all well said. I've got to tell you, I like the way you do what you do, Zach. You're a good man, and I can't say enough good things about you. Having said that, thanks for coming on and sharing those experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Vic. Anytime, my friend.
Thanks again so much. Have a great night.
Check you later, Vic. Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.